Well, hello, friends. Mark Holmes here, and as always, I want to thank you all for being part of Joe Boo's Day Job. And make sure you hit the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up if you can. Of course, all of those things help out the channel. I have been thinking about solar power. I don't know if any of you have had any experience with it. I would love to hear in the comments your experiences with solar power. Do you think it's worthwhile? Did you have a great experience? Was it a no-go? Do you think the solar panels are ugly? Did you save a whole bunch of money? I want to know what your experience is with it. I had an experience going to BJ's, and I had a person who works for BJ's, of course, selling different products, of course, for BJ's. She had come up to me and said that, have you ever been interested in solar power and so on? BJ's actually ends up doing installation and so on, and would love to give you a quote. The main reason why I actually listened and actually took the call on it was because of an experience I had years ago. Years ago, I was in Home Depot, which I was every day, general contractor, construction worker, and so on. And I don't really care how I look. I know I'm going to go out and get dirty, so I'm not going to wear good clothes to get dirty and tear up and stuff. So I probably look like a bum. Let me at least give that point out there. But every day that I was at Home Depot, I would see this woman who was there with a clipboard, and she's talking to, patrons in Home Depot, and would never talk to them. I would make sure, and this is like week after week, I would make sure I'd make eye contact with her, because I was wondering, okay, what is it that she's discussing, and why is she ever discussing it with me? Finally, after about 6 weeks of seeing this woman every day that I go into Home Depot, I went up to her and I said, "Hey, how you doing? What are you doing here?" And she said, "We sell home services for homeowners." And she turned. I said, "Okay." I said, "How come you never asked me?" And she said, "Because we sell home services for homeowners." And I said, "Really?" I said, I've got rental properties that I own, as well as the home I live in. "Oh, well, we can..." Let's stop right there. I said, "You went to an assumption of me from what I looked like on the outside. So, no, thank you. Don't judge a book by its cover. You're the last person I'd ever get any home services from." So when BJ's and this person who didn't make assumptions came up and asked, I went ahead and took, and talked to her and stuff, and had our first meeting on the possibility of it. So I'm still learning that. I got another meeting. I don't know if we'll do this or not. Some places I'm learning are more advantageous than others, depending on what side of the house faces the south side and so on, the amount of trees and things. Here's what I've learned so far. With my house that I live in, we use a lot of electricity, on the tune of about 42,000 kilowatt hours a year, which is a lot, okay? It's a good sized house, but part of the reason why I use so much would be a lot because of my workshop. My workshop has, a lot of 220 amp pieces of equipment that I use that pull a lot of electricity. So 42,000 kilowatts is a lot. So this is what they said. My house, of course, is facing the south, the rear roof, which is great because nobody really would see those because of the way the yard and everything is. You wouldn't see those. The bad part of it is you would need to trim the trees around or possibly get rid of some of the trees. Something that I really wouldn't want to do to get rid of the trees. And technically, the trees that are shading it are not on my property. They're actually on the state's own property. So that's another issue in itself. The bigger question is the cost. So the way it would be working is out of pocket, you're not paying anything out of pocket to get the thing started. You are basically paying the solar company, my understanding, basically for the system that I would have would be 26 panels, he said, which would produce somewhere between 13 and 16,000 kilowatt hours. So roughly about a third or a little more than my current electrical consumption. So you would be paying the company about somewhere around $150 a month for the work that's on there. Now, the next part of this is your roof needs to be in good shape, that it's got to at least have 10 or 15 years worth of life on it, which means you may also need to get your roof redone too, which is something that they can take care of and roll into the price. So now the price of the roof, of course with the solar panels, is all put in there together in one bill. Now, my understanding for the electricity itself, here's the next part of the equation. You pay for the electricity one time a year for what you don't use to the power company. So you get one bill. So hypothetically, I've got the 15,000 kilowatt hours of electricity I produced. Now I have the kilowatt hours minus 42 minus the 15, which would leave 22,000 kilowatt hours. Is that right? 27,000 kilowatt hours of electricity left over. So you would get one bill at the end of the year for that electricity. Now, if it ended up being that you ended up using less electricity, maybe you're not in the home as much, or maybe I stopped doing woodworking or whatever, any extra electricity that you use goes back into the grid, or that you produce goes back in the grid, in which case you get a credit for it. I would never get a credit for this. But there's rebates from the state, and there's tax breaks, incentives from the federal government. So basically, they were saying because I would have the 26 panels, that you would get $900 back as a rebate check every year from the state because you are on solar. So you would take that and minus it from the electric bill. And I think they'd worked it out with the current amount per kilowatt hour. That it's somewhere around $1,900 is what the electric bill would be at the end of the year. Then minus the $900. So it came out to like $900. Somewhere in there would be my electric bill at the end of the year. If you divide that by 12 months, that's like $75 a month. So what it would work out to be, not counting the roof, would be about $225 a month for the electricity that I currently use, as opposed to where it averages out to about $400 a month. So that's saving $150 a month on the electricity, not counting the cost of the new roof, which you would need to do eventually anyway. So, anybody out there who's got solar panels and have gone through the process, does this sound what you went through? And what was your experience like with having solar? So this is where I want to get you guys' opinion. I'm not sure I'm going to do that with my current house, because we are thinking, as me and my wife are getting older, our retirement plans may not be in our current home, and we may be selling it in a few years. But we have other properties that it may be advantageous to try, especially ones that don't use as much electricity. Because if we didn't use as much electricity, then of course it would end up being more cost effective. If I'm I'm not using 42,000 kilowatt hours, if I'm saying using only 30,000, then basically there would be no electric bill. So let me know in the comments your experience on solar power. And we have another meeting today as they look at a different property that may be more advantageous for having it. No trees to deal with and so on, and better facing for the sun and stuff. As always, I appreciate each and every one of you. And make sure you hit the like button and the subscribe button. And I'll talk to you soon.